right, hey, thank you. My name's Andrew Trukowski. This is my colleague David Vitale. We're going to do a little demo theater for you about administering your web GIS. Before we start, I want to know who I'm talking to and what your levels of experience are. So how many people are already using the Python API? Oh, that's a good number.
All right.
Who uses Juniper notebooks like in their day-to-day experience? You know, that's great. Just less, but that's good. How many people is your first time or are still using Python 2.7 primarily? Okay, we're going to try to convert you over this whole week because Python 2.7 is going away. That's another talk for another time. So our agenda basically is this, our introduction, what we're doing now. We're going to say, what is the Python API? We're going to talk about getting started with the GIS object, which is your window essentially into your web GIS. And then we're going to dive into some demos. And these demos will primarily focus on configuring your front end for Portal. Now, the reason we're only covering this one topic is because we don't have a lot of time. And time's the biggest constraint. Tomorrow, there'll be a longer session about managing I believe it's at 5:30 p.m. So if you want to go see that, more topics will be covered on the issue of Portal and enterprise management, as well as GIS management. And then in our ArcGIS server, we're going to talk about connecting to your servers that are unfederated. A lot of you might have existing infrastructure that you don't have federated yet, legacy products, and things that you need to start moving till you get to the new enterprise platform that's been around for a couple years now, but it might not be new to your organization. Then we're going to look at server logging and then talk about a few other Dave's going to talk about a few other cool little things as we move forward, and then take some questions. So the first thing we want to start with is what can you do with the Python API? And the Python API, it works differently for different people within your organization. As managers, you can manage people's content, the site, obviously, servers, groups, and all kinds of other little, you can basically micromanage individual users. You can enforce policies and do other tasks like that. And then you have your power user developers. These are people who can take the API and make new tools with it. Then you have the analysts and the subsection of your data scientists possibly where you work. And these people, you can do spatial analysis, you can work with imagery, and you can also do some big data analytics. Then you have your content publishers, and these are the people in your organizations that produce things. They publish it out. They can be various organizations that basically put out authoritative content. And as managers, you have the power to actually set something as authoritative. It's not shown here, but I just wanted to let you know that you can actually mark data sets now as authoritative. So overall, if you take all this is a way to script and automate your web GIS and also to provide a way to do analysis. I talked a little about what individuals can do, but really what's inside the API is a whole host of functions. You might not need all of these, but each little shape up there, it contains a whole set of features. Whether it's just working with published geoprocessing tools or just using geometry services to do geometric operations like reprojecting your data. You can work with features, which lets you hook into feature services and hosted feature layers. Network analysis, raster analysis, hundreds of functions in there, both local and using web services. It's very powerful, and you can do a lot of things. And if you're like me, you'll be very excited about it. I love writing it, and I love seeing what you all do with it. So the GIS object, like I said before, is your window into the GIS world. It allows you to connect into your enterprise GIS through various forms of authentication. What you're going to see a lot of here through a lot of this demo is you're going to see the built-in method. And that's when you install the vanilla flavor of Enterprise, you have just some simple username and passwords. But we also support LDAP, PKI, Win Authentication, SAML using OAuth, and then anonymous NTLM. I mean, basically, if you can do it on Portal, you can log in with the GIS object. So I mentioned before about logging in as anonymous. Just to get started, if you just wanted to play around and you don't have a named user, you can just take the GIS class and just create the object. You're now connected to ArcGIS Online. You didn't have to pass it any URL, but you can start using content that's hosted on there that's shared publicly with everyone on that site. If you want to get a little more sophisticated and use stuff both within your organization and outside, you can provide a named user. Here, I pass a username and password in to my GIS object, and you get back the ability to both access content within your organization and outside. Once you're in, if you ever want to know who you are, if you forget, you can always do gis.users.me, and you can make sure I'm an administrator of the site that I've logged into, and I can go ahead and I can start customizing it. So the demo that we're going to do here today for Portal is we're going to talk about customizing your front-end homepage and how you want to make it look. Customization is very subjective to individuals, and in this case, we're going to imagine you took a whole bunch of notes from a whole bunch of people, and you're going to start designing your front end. So when you install Portal, and you get your ArcGIS Enterprise stood up, it looks like this. It's pretty bland. It tells you, it comes with a description saying that you can edit this description by going in through a GUI, and it has just a generic ArcGIS Enterprise. And by default, you probably do not want this to represent your organization, so you want to customize it. Using the Python API, we can access the underlying functions that allow you to set it up, and you can script this. So if you have multiple sites, maybe ones that sit in development, QA, and then eventually production, you can all have them have the same look and feel, so as you go through your testing, and users have the same experience, and you can expect it to operate. So once again, I'm providing a URL, so this allows me to connect to an enterprise. I'm providing a username and a password. But then you'll notice another thing. There's a tag on there called verify cert equals false. That's very important. When you first set up your portal, there's a chance your certificate might not be valid. And by setting it to false, you say ignore those certificates until I can actually get it set up. You wouldn't want to do this in production, but as you're setting up sites, it's very important because you can get SSL errors as you move along and prevent you from doing what you want to do. So now that we're an administrator and we're connected to our site, we access through the GIS object. We go gis.admin, which allows us to hook into our admin manager, and we access the UX properties. This allows us to configure what we want to do. On the UX, we have a various collection of methods and operations that allow us to set our default base map, set our extent, have a description, enable or hide the description as well, set feature content, which is a scrolling bar where you can add content that you want featured for your users on your site, set background, banner, logo, and name. So we're going to set our feature content first. This is going to give us that bar in between your description and your logo, where you can then share items to it and have it show up. Every portal has the same group ID on there. So that ID that's up there on screen will always be available if you wanted to use that group to do the default feature content and app thing. And you can set the number of items that you want in the scroll bar. I chose 12. But since this is an empty portal, you'll see that you don't have any items automatically shared with it. You would eventually have to go back to each item that you want and share it out to that group for it to show up in that scroll bar. But we're only talking about customizing the front end, so that gives you that scroll bar there. Next, we decided that we didn't want to have a description on the front site. We want to do everything through the logo. And that's easy of just passing a Boolean value off the UX object and doing ux.description visibility equals to false. It hides it. Next, we're going to set a banner. Banner is sort of what describes what your organization looks like and how you want it to look and feel. The banner that we have now, we set it just by going ux.setBanner when we pass in the path. It automatically sets it, and now it's on your front end if you go to the site. On the top bar, when you look at a site where it says map content, and as you log in, you have a couple other tabs, that needs to be customized too. And the way to customize that is to go to use the gis.update properties and define additional CSS in your code. I'm just going to show you what that looks like. What I did here, and it's highlighted, is I just added a little snippet to change the background color of my CSS to the pink color to match the logo. I pass that into the variable and it returns true, and it's been set. Next, we wanted to add a contact us button, and this allows us to set the link to contact us, and it'll appear at the bottom of the page. Backgrounds can be set just as easily as logos and other objects, logos and banners within ArcGIS. We set it by, once again, accessing the UX object and doing a set background and setting the background color and image that we'd like. The result of all this mess that we've done is a very ugly website that I designed for you all today to look at, and you can then go and you can then go ahead and do further customization, or if you'd like to do, we can fix the mess and return back to the way it was, which I recommend. You can do all that by accessing all those functions again and passing in none. So for the first couple of methods, we have set background, set banner, set logo. We're all going to set to none. We're going to say we don't want that feature content bar again, and we're going to set it back to none. We're going to turn the description visibility back on, set it to true, and we're going to take out that CSS we put in and disable the contact us button. After passing that all in, we get the result back to that wonderful website that we started with at the beginning, and you can sit down and start doing your redesign all over again. I'm going to hand it off to Dave now, and he's going to start talking. Before I forget, we have some useful information on how all this can happen, because we broke up the topic into 2 points. For getting help with the API, the first 2 links will take you to the help on that. Information on what you can customize through HTML and CSS is available on the supported HTML. And then there's a blog post that's on blogs.arcgis.com that talks about tips on homepage customization. And it gives examples of how banner sizes and other image sizes affect how it looks on the page and how you might want to customize and design your site. So now I'm going to hand it over to Dave and start talking about ArcGIS Server.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. So as Andrew touched on earlier, I'll scoot over here. The Python API is best used when you're with ArcGIS Online or through Portal with an enterprise deployment. However, you can use the API to do a subset of tasks with a standalone or unfederated ArcGIS server. So the syntax is a little bit different, so pay attention closely on this slide. We're not creating a GIS object, we're creating a server object from arcgis.gis.server. You have your base URL, and you're connecting actually to the admin credential page, which is /arcgis/admin in a lot of cases. Make sure you're running on the right port. You need to specify the token URL section, which is the generate token endpoint on your REST API with then your admin username and password. So provided you do the syntax correctly, you should be able to authenticate to your standalone ArcGIS server with no major errors. So once you're connected to it, what can you actually do? A lot of the similar things you can do. You can go through all of the folders in your ArcGIS server and look at the different items that are in there. So in this case, we have 2 user-defined folders, a folder of Ebola with a map server of Ebola outbreaks, and a health data server with a health data folder with flu cases, breast cancer data, as well as some system folders of files that I didn't upload. So you can take a look at a closer one of those items. Let's say the breast cancer data item. You know that it's the first item in the health data folder, zero-based indexing, index into it. You get that item, and you can print out the info to get some information on it. Looks like this is the National Cancer Institute. It has to deal with cancer mortality rates. You can see the extent, a lot of the information on it. Some of that information on that item being all of the layers and where they exist on your ArcGIS server. So in this case, it has a few layers. It has the actual breast cancer data feature layer, as well as some of the state and county, map layers. And it looks like this item compares and contrasts white female mortality rates with black female mortality rates. All these layers exist on your server at that location. I just truncated the URL to make it look a little nicer. But you can also take a look at one of the layers in particular. Let's say you don't know what suppressed data is, and you want to get some insight onto that. You just index into it. It was the last item in that list, and you can print out the description of that to see, oh, look, this is what the suppressed data layer actually is about. So again, you can do a lot of things with a standalone ArcGIS server and the Python API, including starting and stopping services. In this case, you just get the sample service, the sample world cities, which comes by a freshly installed ArcGIS server. You can get the name and the description of it. And like on the website, you can press the start and the stop, if you have that sample service, you can print out the status of it. Is it started? Is it stopped? Or you can call .stop to then see, oh, and can I stop this service? It no longer now is running. Or again, do .start to start it back up. So again, with connecting to an ArcGIS server, you can do a subset of a lot of the tasks as you would do if you connect to Portal or ArcGIS Online. Taking a bit of a step back, going back to connecting to, in this case, an ArcGIS Enterprise server, we're going to talk about log analysis and some cool things you can do with the Python API and analyzing the logs on your ArcGIS server. So I'm connecting to a portal in this case, and I am going to query all logs of all time with level of severe. So when you run an ArcGIS server, users tend to mess up or sometimes errors happen. And all of those errors are saved to the logs on your ArcGIS server. But that's a lot of data. I look at this, I'm just printing out the first 2 messages of all the severe logs, and I see error code 20010, it's on this machine, here's the message. It's a whole bundle of JSON that I don't know about you, but I really can't internalize a lot of this information. I can't make sense of it. If you know the particular error code, you can kind of say, okay, let's look at this particular error code. You can see what machine it happened on, how often it happened, the message, and that's good if you know the error code, but you still don't really get an overall view of all the logs that have happened on your ArcGIS server. Maybe there's something in there that can worry you that is happening that you want to know about. So we're in a Python environment. Python comes with a lot of built-in libraries. So you can simply group every single log message by its error code, add it to a new data structure, and then you can now kind of get a broad sense of what error codes happen. Okay, we see error code 20010 happened 82 times. We know that's just a user forgetting their password. I'm not too worried about that. Oh, but what's this? Error code 17103, that happened one time, but that's actually somebody trying to access a feature service and they got an error. Uh-oh, we should look into that. Disclaimer, I just made those up. Don't go look for those error codes. Those probably are not incorrect. And since we're in a Python environment in a Jupyter Notebook, you can simply import a matplotlib. And if you're a visual person like I am, or you want to send some of that data to a boss or a colleague who's not a coder, just simply print out a graph and you'll get a nice visual representation of the frequency of those error codes. Now, you've seen a lot about Jupyter Notebooks throughout this whole Dev Summit. And Jupyter Notebooks are great at visualization, great at sharing code for setting something up, but it's not the only way you can use the Python API. I took all of the functionality of that log analysis that you just saw and put it in a standalone script. I authenticate myself to the server using persistent profiles, a new feature, which doesn't make my username and password available in the script. So this way, I can send this file off to anybody and say, hey, do you want to look at logs? Go run this script. And you can run this anywhere where you have Python running. So I just set up a simple environment with Python running with the ArcGIS package installed. You simply run that Python script on it, connect to ArcGIS, do the log analysis, and output the image. And as you can see, it's a pretty simple process. Image is now outputted, and you can get some info on that. Where you can get to do some really cool stuff is automating a lot of your workflow. So that one standalone script outputted the log just like that. We set up Jenkins internally at Esri to run our unit tests every day at 4:33, run some code every single time someone pushes to master. Jenkins is a continuous integration tool or an automation tool to basically run scripts similar to that log analysis tool whenever you want, on a schedule, whenever certain events happen. So you can get this to run daily and see, oh, were there any regressions in logs that happened? Did some error code happen that can bug us that we should look more into? So that's what you use internally on our team. It works out really great, saves us a lot of time. Highly recommend writing some Python scripts and having them be scheduled through Jenkins or other continuous integration or automation tools to really make your life a lot easier, because that's what this is all about, scripting things so that way the dirty work gets done for you by the Python and you can go do tasks that are a bit higher level and more interesting. So I'd like to thank all of you for coming out and listening to our demo theater talk. Please take our survey. Let us know what you think of the talk. We also have a list of all the other remaining Python API talks, so go to them all, because we're the best team. But otherwise, yeah, any questions?
Sure. Yeah, so all the presentations, including this one and all the other ones you see today, we're going to have on GitHub /Esri. There's in the Python API free repository, there's a subdirectory called Talks. You'll be able to download them, and they'll be available probably within a week or two after the session.
Yep.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
for non-federated. So is there a way that if we have multi-site ArcGIS server and we want to restart the services, Windows services, can we do it through Python?
The question that was asked was, can you restart Windows services through Python? You can restart Windows services through Python, but that is not the Python API.
Yeah.
If you wanted to restart an ArcGIS server.exe, something like that, you'd probably have to hook into you'd have to hook into Windows itself and restart that service manually. So you can be done. It's just not. This isn't the right tool for that.
Right.
Any other questions? Yes, ma'am. Here, hold on. I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
All right, I'm just going to talk through this. So are there things you can't do in the UX that you can't do manually? Does that sum it up? You can do pretty much everything. I can fully customize it through the Python API. Through the UX sense, so you could set your logo banner for the. You're talking about just for the homepage, or are you talking about for other things? Okay, so that's a slightly different question. So the advantage of using scripting over doing it manually is when you have multiple environments or you have multiple migrations, you can set it up once, run the script, and then you don't have to do it again. That's the advantage.
Yeah, you can make a standalone script that configures it in the exact way that you want, and then you can hand that script off to somebody else. Oh, whenever you set up a new server, just run this script, and we'll get the UX to look just like it does before.
All right. If you have specific questions, I can answer them after we're done taking questions, if there's something you're looking for. Is there any other questions? We have a couple more minutes. Yes.
I mean, you can attach a portal to your Active Directory. So you have users from the portal, from AD in your portal. But how is there, through the API, a possibility to remove users from the portal that are no longer in the AD or left are taken out of the specific portal?
So if the user doesn't exist in your Active Directory, can you delete them? Is that the question? Yes, you can. Yeah, you can do a user.delete, and they should be removed from the system, assuming that they don't have any more items or their owners of groups or any other. Yeah.
One more scenario, I think everybody would be using it. Like, if we have to propagate a service which I have developed published in development, and I have to propagate to UAT and production in the file. So, can Python, through Python, can we have a toolbox or where we can do it? Like, if the service is, I have published the service in development, and without publishing it directly to the server, I want my Python to run and propagate that service to UAT and production.
So you want to move your services from one to the other? You can copy services. So is this in an enterprise situation or an unfederated server? It's unfederated. So you can use the API has the ability to create services, but an easier way to do that is to, if you don't need the underlying data as you move up, just to have base SD files and then just copy and republish them. You can take all the JSON that's behind all those services that you have, call create service, and stand everything up. But in addition to doing that, you're going to have your backend file system with all the references set up also. So you're going to have to do some transferring of data that you have on the back end. So the easiest way to do that is to create your SD file once, your template files, and then just republish them every time using, for an unfederated server, just use there's a publish SD method on the server class.
Okay.
This individual might have an exact answer for you.
Great.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very
please
much.
take the survey and see the other sessions. If you want to see more on portal and server management, we have an additional session tomorrow, like I mentioned before. I encourage you all to come out, and we hope to see you there. Any questions? We can come to the ArcGIS Python API Islands, and a lot of developers who make this will be standing around waiting to ask your questions. It's great meeting you all. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you all. Thanks.